Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Chris, and on today's video we're talking about two forgotten fragrances from the house of Chanel. So on today's video, as you have seen from the title, we're comparing two fragrances from the house of Chanel, Allure Eau De Parfum as well as Gabrielle Eau De Parfum. Now, you're probably wondering where is this comparison coming from or why he decided to make this decision of comparing both of these fragrances, or what do they even have in common? And I am saying to you now, these have a lot more in common than you think. They're both a forgotten child of Chanel. I know that Gabrielle is still new, but it's not doing very well when it comes to sales and performance and stuff like that. It's not having growth. They're not launching a ton of flankers like they are with other fragrances in the house of Chanel. And Allure is kind of dying out. I mean, it's one of those fragrance lines that, was never super popular, but it was never a fragrance line that also really got the chance to shine, because these are very different for Chanel. Chanel is a brand we are very much in love with when it comes to perfumery. At least they are one of my favorite lines when it comes to the actual scents. Packaging is a whole different story, if you ask me. Like, this should not be doing this. I mean, this is not a very cheap fragrance. I don't know. I'm not a really big fan of the actual packaging for these bottles themselves. But let's get into it to see what the similarities and the differences are between Gabrielle and Allure. So let's start off with Allure Eau de Parfum. So Allure has a couple of different flankers. They have the Eau de Toilette as well as Eau Sensuelle. I believe Eau Sensuelle was discontinued in certain markets and it's still available in other markets. But this fragrance was launched in 1999, so right around the millennium of the, or is it the end of millennium or the millennium? I don't know. But it was launched in 1999, and the perfumer for this fragrance is Jacques Bolge. Let's look at the packaging. So I don't know, it's not really a packaging that I would pick if I were a designer house. It's very simple in its design itself. Yes, I can see how this would be interpreted as timeless or as classic. It says Allure large. There's no visible Chanel logos except on the cap. And it says Chanel up there. You also get no logo at the top here. You get some information here at the bottom, where the fragrance was made, the batch code, all that good stuff. And there's nothing on the sprayer itself. So very simplistic. The cap itself is a metal of some sorts. I think it's like aluminum or like metal composite of some sorts. Nothing super expensive or fancy, but we have come to accept that Chanel doesn't need to be fancy or to give you great packaging to sell fragrance. This fragrance contains bourbon vanilla, citron, mandarin orange, honeysuckle, jasmine, may rose, vetiver, and water lily. So this fragrance is definitely in line with Chanel when it comes to the powdery elements to the actual fragrance itself. It's kind of like a dustiness that there is in the background with every Chanel fragrance. I know a lot of people say it's aldehydes, and not in this one, not in this fragrance at all. It's not necessarily an aldehydic type of powderiness. It's kind of like an orris root or orris butter type of scent itself, but it's very warmed up. This fragrance is a warm, sexy, sensual fragrance. It is going to be very calm, very polite, very subdued. You definitely get a sweetness to this fragrance as well. It's not going to be intoxicatingly sweet, but it is going to be sweet, powdery, very refined, very soft and elegant. It's a very quiet fragrance. It's a fragrance, like I said, that is warm. And Chanel fragrances are not known for being warm scents. And the reason I say that's because we're typically used to like number 5, Coco. They have all this cold DNA or this cold touch behind every single scent. It's very hard to describe itself, but if you know Chanel fragrances and if you've smelled Chanel fragrances and you know what I'm talking about, there is like I said, a very cold element to each fragrance. This one itself is very, like I said, warm. It's very soft. It's very delicate. It's kind of like what Gabrielle was supposed to be. So this fragrance was launched in 2017. And the reason that the name is Gabrielle is because Coco, the designer, as you guys may know her actual name was Gabrielle Chanel. And this was supposed to interpret Gabrielle before becoming Coco Chanel. So the girl that grew up in an orphanage, the girl that was abandoned by her father. All of those sad things that happened to Gabrielle Chanel are supposed to be represented in this fragrance itself. Now, this one itself kind of gives you that same vibe because they're warm, they're soft, they're dreamy, they're delicate. They are looking at the world with open wide eyes and dreaming big, as Gabrielle did whenever she was abandoned in that orphanage so long ago. So, I mean, I don't know, they both kind of have that same vibe and that same DNA to them. I will say something about this one itself is that the name itself, Allure, is not really symbolic to the actual fragrance. To me, this fragrance, like I said, represents a more soft, more delicate side to the House of Chanel, which is something very, very nice, and it's something refreshing for Chanel, because you go to Chanel and you kind of already have in your mind that they're all going to have this powderiness, they're all going to have this cold element to them, and that's nice and all, but they kind of can get old for some people, and it can be a little bit dated as well. Now, this fragrance, I'm not saying by any means is modern, but this fragrance was a pioneer and a revolutionary fragrance for its time. Now you're probably thinking, why is it revolutionary, or why was it a pioneer? Let's look at today's fragrances in today's perfumery. We have fragrances like Libre by Yves Saint Laurent. That fragrance is a floral powdery concoction of a fragrance. Not done very well in my opinion. Just saying, don't get mad. And there's a lot of fragrances that kind of follow that same trend, where it's powderiness, it's going to have floral elements to it. It's going to have a little bit of a woody element to it as well. And there's a lot of sweetness to it in today's women's fragrances, at least the ones that are popular. And it's kind of overdone now. Back in 1999, it wasn't overdone. And I think that this fragrance did it very well, because it grabbed all three elements, the powderiness, the woodiness, and the sweetness, as well as the floral part. And it really mixed it together. It wasn't giving you too much of one thing, it wasn't giving you too less of another thing. It was literally just very well blended. So you got all elements in this fragrance, with it being very well balanced, very well rounded, and being a scent that really works. I mean, it's very, very well refined, and it's extremely luxurious and sexy. Now going on to Gabrielle. This fragrance is, when I heard from Chanel, because they actually announced this fragrance when I worked for Chanel before it was launched. Obviously, you had to sign NDA, non-disclosure agreements, about the actual fragrance itself, and what you knew. You couldn't tell anyone at the time until the fragrance was launched, of course. And the actual fragrance, I ended up leaving Chanel before they actually launched this fragrance. And in my mind, I thought, there's a new perfumer, Olivier Polge, which was new at the time with Chanel. And I also thought, it's a new nameplate for Chanel. They haven't done that in quite some time. This is very exciting. They're going to take inspiration from Coco or Gabrielle when she was younger in her youth. Inspired visionary artist that was Gabrielle before she became Coco Chanel. And it fell flat on its face, just like Joy did, because I actually moved from Chanel to Dior to launch Joy. Both of them were whopping disappointments to me, because you have the DNA of Chanel, and although this one still follows that powdery element in it, it kind of becomes an overly citric, florally fragrance that has lots and lots of ylang ylang and jasmine in it. So it's floral, but it's very citricy as well. It's also very warm for citric fragrance. So the notes that we get in this fragrance are going to be grapefruit, mandarin orange, jasmine, musk, orange blossom, ylang ylang, blackcurrant, grass tuberose, as well as sandalwood. So this fragrance is very clean. It's very delicate. It's very refined. It's very soft, and it does have lots of inspiration from Gabrielle before she was very popular. There was an article that I remember it was circulating, and this is just alleged. I mean, I'm not, saying that this actually happened. There was an article circulating inside of Chanel, maybe not, that stated that one of the inspirations for the perfumer was the Abbey of Aubergine orphanage, which is where Chanel grew up after she was abandoned by her father. And there were these type of citric fruits or citric cleaners of some sorts that were used in the Abbey of Aubergine orphanage. And because of that, this fragrance kind of has that DNA of those citric notes in there. I believed it then. I don't believe it now, because we've started to see Jacques Polge actually use these same type of ingredients in a lot of the newer launches from Chanel. And that seems to be his style. So I'm not sure if he really got inspired from that, because this was a style already, if that makes any sense. But the fragrance itself, it's not the most groundbreaking, not the most revolutionary fragrance, but it does capture the essence of young Coco, which is what I like. Now, both of these, you're probably, like I said, wondering what they have in common whatsoever. They're both warm scents from Chanel. What I mean by that, one can be a little bit more citricy, it can have some woody elements and some floral elements. The other one's going to have a lot more earthy tones and floral elements as well, but they both have that powdery, soft, sweet, delicate fragrance that's going to be warm at heart, giving it a very different dynamic for the House of Chanel. I cannot express enough that both of these fragrances are often overlooked. Which one would I pick? I would say that probably, from my opinion and my taste, I would go for Allure. It seems to capture young Coco's DNA a little bit better. It's soft, it's delicate, it's looking at the world with bright, open eyes, it's dreaming. It's that little kid that you know, if you can capture yourself as a little kid, we all have this moment where we're little kids and they ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you say, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a doctor or a nurse. And you have these big open eyes, you are very happy, you're inspired by everything in the world. This is what this fragrance captures, in my opinion, from young Coco. It's very soft, it's very delicate, but it's happy, it's vibrant, it's looking forward to life. And this one does capture that as well, don't get me wrong. It's just this one itself just kind of blends into a world of generic fragrance. It's not necessarily Olivier Paul's fault, which is the perfumer for this fragrance. It's just where we've seen this. We've seen this combination of notes before. Yes, it's Chanel. Yes, it has some Chanel DNA is niche to it. But at the same time, there's only so many things you can do to make these notes, you know, very brand new or appealing or different in any shape, way, or form. And I don't know, it's a little bit of a disappointing fragrance from my opinion. I would definitely say that if you're looking for a fragrance that's definitely high quality when it comes to the actual juice, not packaging, then to try one of these two fragrances. I will say one thing, Allure, in my opinion, at least for my personal use, does not last very long compared to Gabrielle. Gabrielle seems to have a long lasting power, which is surprising because it's more citric. Typically, citric fragrances don't last very long, but anywho, let me know down in the comments which one you prefer, which one you like, which one is the one that you're gonna. I keep shaking this, it's driving me nuts. Let me know down in the comments which one you prefer and which one you'd like. Let me also know in the comments, what is your favorite Chanel fragrance? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more fragrance related content. Until next time, you guys, take care.